Okay, so let's jump into this really chaotic moment in history. It's um it's one of those times that shows you what happens when a revolution wins, but the winners just immediately start fighting each other.
Exactly. We're in France, 1792. The king is gone, the monarchy's been overthrown, and France is, well, it's scrambling. They have to build a republic from the ground up.
And it's not like they had time to figure it out. The new government, the National Convention, had this impossible job. They had to run a country and fight off like half of Europe at the same time.
Right. All these other monarchies wanted to crush the revolution, so the pressure was immense. And the people in the convention, mostly young, very passionate men, they split, and they split hard.
They had completely different ideas about how to save this new republic.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just a simple disagreement. This was a life or death struggle for the soul of France.
And that struggle really boiled down to two big groups, the Girondins and the Jacobins.
So let's start with the Girondins. They get labeled the moderates, but, I mean, let's be clear, they were still revolutionaries.
Oh, absolutely. They had just helped overthrow a king. But within this new context, they were the calmer voices. Many of them came from outside Paris, from a region called the Gironde, which is where the name comes from.
And who were that? What kind of people?
They were often, well-off professionals, lawyers, journalists, businessmen. They basically felt that the revolution had already done its main job.
Which was getting rid of the king's absolute power.
Exactly. For them, it was like, okay, mission accomplished. Now let's build a stable country. They really valued things like personal freedom, the right to own property, and following the new constitution to the letter.
But the biggest thing, and this is key, was a real fear of Paris.
A profound fear. They saw the city, especially the poor and the working class, as this radical, unpredictable mob that was trying to bully the whole country. They believed elected representatives should be in charge, not angry crowds.
Okay, so if the Girondins are the voice of the provinces and stability, the Jacobins are the complete opposite.
They are the radical heart of Paris. They got their name from an old monastery where they used to meet. They were masters of political organizing.
And they were incredibly popular in the city, right?
Hugely popular, especially with the poor. Their core belief was that the revolution had barely even started. For them, getting rid of the king was just step one.
So they wanted to completely remake society.
Totally, a complete restructuring to make everything truly equal. And they were willing to use extreme measures, really strict laws, government force, anything to protect the republic from its enemies.
It's such a clear split in philosophy. The Girondins are all about the individual's rights.
Whereas the Jacobins believed the needs of the nation, of the republic itself, came first. If that meant suspending some individual rights to save the country, so be it.
So you have these two groups who fundamentally disagree on everything. Where does it first explode into a real fight?
Bread. It's almost always comes down to the basics. The economy was a total disaster,
Right, they were fighting these huge wars, printing money like crazy.
which led to massive inflation. Prices for everything, especially food, were skyrocketing. And people in Paris were going hungry.
And this is where the two sides just couldn't agree. The Girondins were all about the free market.
Yes, they said the government should stay out of it. No price controls. They believed that setting a maximum price for bread would just discourage farmers from growing it and make the shortages even worse.
But that made them look like they just didn't care if poor people starved.
It was a political disaster for them. It made them seem like the party of the rich merchants and big landowners, and the Jacobins jumped all over that.
They demanded that the government step in.
They said it was the government's moral duty to set a maximum price on essentials to keep people from starving.
Yeah.
They used that popular anger as a political weapon.
And this all ties into that whole problem of Paris and this group called the Sans-Culottes.
The sans-culottes, yeah, the name is so important. It literally means without knee breeches.
Because the rich aristocrats wore these fancy silk knee breeches, the culottes, but the working men wore long trousers. It was a fashion statement that was also a huge political statement.
It was. The sans-culottes were the shopkeepers, the artisans, the laborers of Paris. They were the ones on the streets. They were the muscle of the revolution.
And the Jacobins were their champions.
They formed a very close alliance. The Jacobins saw them as the true spirit of the revolution, keeping the government honest. But the Girondins, well, they just saw a mob.
They saw it as blackmail, right? Like, how can you have a real debate in Parliament when there are thousands of armed men outside demanding you vote a certain way?
Precisely. The The Girondins felt like they were hostages in their own capital. They even talked about moving the government out of Paris or
Yeah.
getting an army from the provinces to protect them.
Which probably didn't make them very popular in Paris.
It made them look like they were against the revolution itself. It was a huge mistake.
So this whole power struggle, it had to come to a head. And it did, with the trial of the king, Louis XVI.
This was the ultimate test. The Jacobins were crystal clear. Execute him. Now, they said he was a traitor who worked with France's enemies, and that the Republic couldn't be safe as long as he was alive.
No room for debate. He had to go.
But the Girondins were much more cautious. They were lawyers. They believed in process. They worried that killing a king would unite every other country in Europe against them.
So what did they propose?
They suggested an appeal to the people. Let the entire country vote on what to do with him. A national referendum.
They were trying to slow things down, to take the decision out of the hands of the radicals in Paris.
But the Jacobins painted that as weakness, as cowardice. They even hinted that the Girondins were secret royalists trying to save the king.
And in the end,
The Jacobins won. The vote was close, but it went their way. King Louis was executed by guillotine in January 1793. That was the moment. It showed everyone that the radicals were now in charge.
the Girondins had lost control.
Completely. And the Jacobins just kept using the pressure from the sans-culottes.
Mm.
Every time there was a big vote, the crowds would appear, surrounding the convention building.
It sounds less like a government and more like a siege.
It really was. Imagine trying to debate policy when you can hear thousands of people outside chanting for your arrest. The Girondins were basically paralyzed.
And at the same time, the war is still going on and it's not going well.
Right. And this is another place where the Jacobins outmaneuvered the Girondins. They became the party of total war. They demanded every person, every resource be thrown into the fight to save France. It made them look like the true patriots.
So with all this crisis war, rebellion, political chaos, the government decides it needs to do something drastic.
They create the Committee of Public Safety. Think of it as a small, super powerful war cabinet. It was designed to make quick decisions without having to go through the whole assembly.
And let me guess, the Jacobins took it over.
Immediately, it became their personal tool. With leaders like Robespierre in charge, they used it to control the army, the police, everything. They could now run the country directly.
For the Girondins, this must have been the ultimate nightmare. They were watching the Republic turn into a dictatorship right before their eyes.
It was their worst fear realized. And it all came to a violent end in the spring of 1793.
What happened?
The Jacobins and their allies in the press started openly accusing the Girondin leaders of treason. Then, on June 2nd, the sans-culottes, backed by armed soldiers, surrounded the convention again.
But this time it was different.
This time, they had a specific demand: the arrest of 29 leading Girondin deputies. It was basically an armed coup against the elected government.
And the deputies inside were trapped.
Completely trapped. They were told that if they didn't vote to arrest their own members, the crowd would storm the building. To avoid a bloodbath, they gave in.
Wow. So they were forced to vote for the arrest of their colleagues.
Yes, the Girondin leaders were arrested. And just like that, the Jacobins had total, unopposed control of France. The debate was over.
And that's when the reign of terror begins.
That's the start of it. With no opposition left, the Committee of Public Safety set out to eliminate anyone they considered an enemy of the revolution.
How did they do that legally? Or was it just chaos?
Oh, they made it legal. They passed something called the Law of Suspects. And it is one of the most terrifying laws in history.
What did it say?
It basically allowed the government to arrest anyone who, through their words, their friends, or even just their lack of enthusiasm, could be considered an enemy of liberty.
That's so vague. You could be arrested for anything.
For anything, it created this cloud of paranoia over the whole country. People were denouncing their neighbors just to prove they were loyal themselves.
And they set up special courts for these suspects.
The revolutionary tribunals, they were designed for speed, not justice. You often had no right to a lawyer, no right to call witnesses. The trials were a sham.
And the sentence was almost always the same.
Death by guillotine. Thousands were executed, including those Girondin leaders they arrested. The Jacobins argued that this terror was necessary to purify the nation and save the Republic.
A necessary evil.
In their minds, yes. But it plunged France into this incredibly dark period of fear and bloodshed.
When you look back, this whole fight between the Girondins and the Jacobins is it's the core story of the revolution turning on itself.
It is. The Girondins are remembered for trying to defend the rule of law and individual rights. The Jacobins are remembered for their absolute drive for equality, even if it meant using extreme violence.
It's just such a stark example of how the desire for security and revolutionary purity can just completely destroy the idea of freedom.
And it leaves us with a really difficult question that's still relevant today.
Yeah. Can you justify tyranny if you believe it's the only way for your vision of a better world to survive?
A tough one to think about.
It really is. Good luck with your studies.